Good evening, everyone. And I do apologize for the late start. We were just wrapping up an executive session. So thank you for your patience and thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's going to be a fun evening. The public can attend tonight's meeting in person at the George DeSierro City and County Buildings Council Chambers located at 1 Tacoma Drive, or watch live on Channel 8 and through live streaming on Broomfield's website, broomfield.org/live. The public may also participate in public comment either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name and the neighborhood they live in and the item you'd like to comment on. If you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, please press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1.5 minutes to speak. For our hearing impaired residents present, we have wireless headsets available through our AV team in the back of the council chambers. The City Council regular meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Delgadillo.
Here.
Hinkle. Jezierski.
He's here, but he'll be coming.
Leslie.
Here.
Lim.
Here.
Marsh Holshin.
Here.
Schaff.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Thank you. A quorum is present. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And in order to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. We'll plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. The first item under petitions and communications this evening is a proclamation declaring June 22nd, 2023 as Broomfield Fish Day in Broomfield. Will the representatives here to accept the proclamation please come and meet Mayor Pro Tem Jezierski at the podium? Or in your case, Councilmember Marsh Holshin. And welcome, you guys. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves when you get to the. Hi, Ellie. There is a microphone though, so the folks at home can hear too.
Hi, I'm so glad to be able to represent the Fish Organization. I've been a member as long as I can remember. And so we came here in '67, and right after that, I was involved with Fish. And in fact, the name Fish was determined in the hallway of my house because a woman brought a book on England, and they had an organization called Fish there. At that point, we didn't really officially named it. And we thought, yeah, we meet the criteria of what they're doing. So that's the way it got started.
Thank you, Ms. McKinley. Ms. Steele, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I'm Karen Steele. Been with Fish for 25 years. I'm their most favorite truck driver. Just want to put that in the minutes. So if you honk at me at our fish truck, I might get a little angry. So don't do
I
that.
didn't know you drove a truck. That's awesome.
Sometimes when they're in a pinch. But we're just really happy to be here tonight, and we're really happy to represent Fish. It's amazing that Fish is celebrating 60 years when most nonprofits do not make it this long.
Yeah.
So we're really honored. Please join us on the 22nd next week And we're going to have a great time. So come join the party.
Sounds great. Would you guys like to go ahead and introduce yourselves? I know who you are, but everybody
Sure.
else might.
Executive Director at Broomfield Fish and live in Broomfield in Lackamora. And many of you, this is my first time back on my feet since I had a ski accident in March. So I got all the greetings of "you're walking." And I feel like Fish is walking as well. We've been around for 60 years and we're really excited to celebrate with everyone. And I'm just happy to have spent the last 8 years with the organization. So I'll introduce it to Maggie.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maggie Sava. I'm the Communications and Media Relations Manager at Fish, and I've been officially on staff for 3 years, but involved for many years with the organization, grew up with Fish. So very, very happy to be here today.
Well, thank you all for coming and for everything that you do. This proclamation recognizes the 60th anniversary of the founding of Broomfield Fish, an organization which has remained a key resource for our neighbors for 6 decades. Since its establishment, Fish has gone from a food bank that served 25 families a year to a full family resource center, assisting more than 12,000 people each year. Fish continues to grow and adapt with Broomfield's population to help our residents thrive. While best known as a food pantry, Fish also offers services such as emergency rent, utilities, and transportation assistance, referrals to partner organizations, and strength-based one-on-one support to help families on their path to self-sufficiency. Last year, Fish distributed 1,402,192 pounds of food, stabilized 1,228 residents in housing, and helped 138 families with utility assistance with support from community members who volunteer and donate. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim June 22nd, 2023 as Broomfield Fish Day in Broomfield and invite everyone to attend Fish's anniversary celebration on June 22nd. That's this next week from 4 to 7 p.m. in the parking lot on the east side of Six Garden Center. All are welcome to join Fish for a fun-filled evening. For more information, please visit broomfieldfish.org/events. Now we'll move to public comments. If there's anyone in the public that would like to say anything on this proclamation, please come up to the podium. No pressure. And I'll go ahead and offer council the opportunity to say anything. Okay, Councilmember Shah.
Thank you, Mayor. So recently I was reading through Broomfield Fish's website. Can't tell you why or how, but I got onto the About Us section, and I recently found that fish means fellowship and serving humanity, which is something I didn't know until just recently when I looked it up. And I thought, that's so true with this organization. And I think that, we're so grateful to have this organization in Broomfield because when a lot of us do get together and we go down to Fish and we sort cans or, drive in the truck it's our way of getting together as a community and serving our fellow humanity here on Broomfield. So I'm so grateful for you all and for your contributions over the years. And it's grateful to celebrate you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, we are so grateful and we look forward to celebrating with you guys on the 22nd. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, under petitions and communications is a proclamation declaring June 22nd, 2023 as Charlene Orvis Day in Broomfield. Will Ms. Orvis and any other representatives here to accept the proclamation, please come up to the podium and meet Mayor Pro Tem Jezierski. And feel free to introduce yourselves.
I am Charlene Orvis, and I am celebrating my retirement on June 22nd for working at Broomfield High School for 35 years. And I thank you. It's such an honor, and I don't know really why I'm here, but
It's okay. Jen will help me out. She's the assistant principal at Broomfield High School.
Hi there. My name is Jennifer Barr. I'm representing the Broomfield High School administration. And on behalf of the administration and all of your fans here tonight, how many fans are here for
Look
Miss
at all my
Charlene?
fans.
Look at that.
And can I say one thing before she goes on? This is Epsilon Zeta sorority girls that are here, and we give to Fish in our sorority every single year.
So on behalf of everyone at Broomfield High School and all of your fan club tonight, Charlene, you are a legend. You are irreplaceable. You are everything about Broomfield High School. And we are all, everyone who's worked with you is lucky to have done so. You've given all of us really the meaning of what it means to serve in public education, which is passion for what you do and passion for who you serve. So we look forward to celebrating with you and could not be more honored to be in your presence tonight.
And once an eagle, always an eagle. So I'll always
So
be an
I've
eagle.
heard.
Well,
I
thank
just
you
want to
so
say,
much. Thank you.
don't leave yet, Charlene. This,
Oh, I
I'm-
gotta say after I.
you get to hear the
Oh,
proclamation.
this is mine.
That's
Look at
yours.
that.
This proclamation celebrates Charlene Orvis, beloved Broomfield High School Athletics and Activities Secretary, who is retiring after 35 years at BHS. It mentions Ms. Orvis' many accomplishments, awards, and accolades, and recognizes her as someone who embodies the spirit of both Broomfield High School and the Broomfield community as a whole. Ms. Orvis has attended countless school events and positively impacted the lives of decades of students, and her welcoming smile, kindness, support, and knowledge, and her presence will be greatly missed in Eagle Nation. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim June 22nd, 2023 as Charlene Orvis Day in Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We do have public comments for this item. If anybody else wants to speak, you can come up to the podium. You can. Okay. Did anybody on city council want to have any comments? Well, thank you guys so much. It means so much to be able to honor you, and you truly are a legend. So
And you've come to a couple of our pep assemblies.
I know, well, keep inviting me. I love them.
Yes, we had fun. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on. Next is our petition and communications. It's a proclamation declaring June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Day in Broomfield. I'll give them a minute for our folks to, they don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. It's riveting. Especially that Charter Review Committee update. Look at them all. All right. Dr. Carolyn Love, longtime Broomfield resident, joins us this evening to accept the proclamation. Will Dr. Love and any staff here to accept the proclamation please come and meet Mayor Pro Tem Jezierski at the podium? And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Carolyn Love. I've been a Broomfield resident since 1984, and I currently live in Lackamore.
Thank you. You serve on the library board with me.
Yes, I do. I do serve on the library board. And this is really revolutionary. Like I said, I've been in Broomfield since 1984. My daughter went to the middle school here in Broomfield. Broomfield is changing and it's gone through a transformation because Broomfield in 1984 is not like the Broomfield of today. Consequently, my daughter went to middle school here, but I put her in high school in Denver because she needed to be in an environment that would nourish her spirit and honor and understand who she was. So I thank you for this proclamation, but I think also with something like a proclamation, it says a lot about Broomfield. But what really would say a lot about Broomfield is if we focus, I think, on three things. First of all, is to continue this forward progress and to be open and to be open to all communities and be a welcome community for everyone. The second thing in my viewpoint is, and I know this is difficult given our current social milieu, but to be able to be in conversation with people whose point of view you don't necessarily agree with and who is different from you. And then the third thing to kind of stimulate that, because you say, how am I going to do that? Because trust me, it's hard. It's hard work. And I encourage everybody to stay in the conversation, even when the conversation becomes difficult. But then I'm a proponent of asking a question. If there is something that someone says to you that you really do disagree with, rather than calling them out, just say, that's an interesting perspective. Tell me more. And as they tell you more, you learn more about them. And there may be a point of time where you see that little tiny sliver of common ground that you can really open up the door to be in meaningful conversation. So thank you for the proclamation. And I look forward to more work being done in Broomfield.
I am going to read the proclamation. Go ahead, Demetrius. Did you want to say anything?
Well, I just want to, at this time, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Demetrius Parker. I am the Organizational Development and Training Program Manager here at the City and County of Broomfield. And I'll leave my comment to after the proclamation is read.
All right, hold that thought then. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas our country is made up of people from every nation on earth who are declared equal not only in freedom, but also in justice, both of which are essential for a healthy human civilization. And whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States. And whereas a word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed some 2.5 years until June 19, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of both the Civil War and slavery. And whereas celebration of the end of slavery, which became known as Juneteenth, is the oldest known public celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas the faith and strength of character demonstrated by former enslaved African Americans remains an example for all people of the United States, regardless of background, religion, race. And whereas for more than 155 years, Juneteenth Day celebrations have been held to honor African American history, freedom, and achievement, while encouraging self-development and respect for all cultures. And whereas on a larger scale, the celebration of Juneteenth reminds each of us of the precious promises of freedom, equality, and opportunity, which are at the core of the American dream. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Day in Broomfield. And as a governmental body, we oppose and reject any form of oppression and pledge to support our residents and local entities working to achieve equality and protect human rights. And now I'll turn the podium back to you, Mr. Parker.
So yes, as I said, I am an employee here at the City and County of Broomfield. And what I would like to share is my honor, my privilege at the work that we do here at the City and County of Broomfield. When I think about this proclamation and the fact that we talk about freedom, and we talk about freedom for all. And although I don't live in Broomfield, my zip code is Broomfield. My zip code is Broomfield, but I do work here. And when I think about the call to action that we have taken on here at the San Diego County Broomfield, with the conversations that we have, with the work that we do, I am proud to work here, to say that I work here, to talk about the work that we do. And I just really want to share that with everyone. And I want to say thank you for being courageous enough to take on this work. Because as Dr. Love said, it is not easy work. And we understand that every day. And I would just, I just finished doing one of our workshops. And I just want to share that it's, again, it does me proud to see each and every one of us embrace this work and embrace these conversations, even when we don't want to, and even when the work is hard and the conversations are hard, but they are important. And so thank you.
Thank you both. We also have an opportunity for public comment if anyone would like to comment on this item. Any council member comments? Councilmember Lim.
Thank you for your efforts. And I just wanted to give a plug for, I had the opportunity last week to attend a film sponsored by Broomfield in the auditorium. This is Not Who We Are. It spoke about the history of redlining basically in Boulder. And then there was a short documentary on Broomfield also. So if anyone is interested and didn't have the opportunity to see that, the documentary is by Katrina Miller. We had the opportunity to hear her speak also on June 6th, but the documentary itself is available, I think, until the end of the month on the PBS website. It was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was going to bring up the film screening that happened this last week as well. Before the screening of This Is Not Who We Are, there was a short film titled Looking Back for a Vision Forward, which was about Broomfield's history. And one of the pieces that it talked about is the Ann Krause Park that is right next to the water tanks near Cole and 136 where those intersect. And which is basically my backyard. And I learned years ago that this was the site of KKK demonstrations. I guess that's what you could call them. Cross burnings happened up there as well. And found out through this film that this was a larger movement, that they would pick these hillsides throughout the entire Denver metro area. And this would be a signal to the rest of the community that this is who we are. And I think that, what we heard from our proclamation, what we heard just a minute ago really struck me is that, this wasn't ancient history. This was relatively recent history. And this idea of this was kind of the identity of this is who we are, of these demonstrations happening at the top of the hills. And now we as folks get to reconcile that and say, this is not who we are. And we have to recover from that, but also to move forward. And so I think that where we are now is this great proclamation. And thank you, Mayor. My name's not on here and the council member is not on here, but I fully support this. And thank you for doing this, Mayor. And I look forward to taking this step and continuing this forward progress. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I am extremely happy that Broomfield finally, for the first time, is recognizing Juneteenth formally with a proclamation. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Love, for the words you gave before the proclamation was read, because I think the three things that you pointed out are the key for us moving forward as both a people and as a country in better understanding one another and having more acceptance for people who are not like us. So thank you so much for those words.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to echo that gratitude and for everything you've done to be part of this community. And we're grateful that you're here and we're grateful to work and step forward with you. Thank you all. The next item under petitions and communications this evening as an invitation and information regarding the 2023 Brouhaha event. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, community. We always know it's going to be a fun time when Kay Gazaway is in the house. Ms. Gazaway, please introduce us to this item and walk us through, please.
Good evening. Thank you for that nice introduction. My name is Kay Gazaway and I am Broomfield's Community Events Coordinator. And I'm very pleased to be here tonight to tell you about the 7th annual Brouhaha, which is going to be this Saturday, June the 17th, out at Arista Park. And I'm inviting all of you to come and join us. The day is going to start off at 10:30 with a free yoga class on the lawn hosted by our recreation great yoga teachers. The event is at Arista Park and the street will be closed all around the park area. The gates open right at noon. And this is a free event for all ages. So anyone can come. We're just going to check your ID at the gate and give you a little age appropriate wristband. And then everyone's welcome to come in and have fun. There's going to be 2 new live bands this year. The first one's called Andy and the San Luis, and they're going to perform from 12 to 2 with some really danceable music. And then Daddy Blue is going to take over the stage at 2:30 and rock the house until the evening comes. They going to play some really fun cover songs for you all. And we also going to have those popular lawn games come back again. I know y'all like the giant Jenga and the giant Connect Four. And of course, cornhole will be there. Don't worry. We have 5 breweries this year. So there's going to be some really interesting flavors for y'all to check out. Hopefully you'll be able to do that. And then there's plenty of interesting food options to go along with it. We have some new food trucks coming this year. So there'll be some gourmet brats and tots. There's going to be Latin cuisine, Texas barbecue, which is a staple there, some bourbon chicken, mac and cheese, all kinds of good stuff. And the vendor fair was very popular, sold out very early this year. And we're excited to see all the products and services they'll be showing. They're mostly geared towards the young professional and to fit into like a modern lifestyle. Plus, there's going to be several city and county departments there this year also doing community outreach because it definitely gives an opportunity to reach out to a different demographic of our residents than some of our other festivals. So there'll be quite a nice cross section. That is a very quick and fast overview of the festival, but I hope that you'll all come. Hope you'll bring the sunshine, and I'm fingers crossed. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much.
Gazaway, you are guaranteeing no wet, from what I can gather.
No wet guarantee. That's right.
We need to bring the folks from the Holy Comforted Church because they somehow miraculously pulled off a farmer's market kickoff after the rain we had all day. The sun came out. So stay
Fingers crossed.
positive. Yeah, stay positive. All right. Well, we have a public comment. Anyone want to comment on this item? Anything to add? Council members? Looking forward to it. Councilmember Lim.
Yes. I'd like to highlight too, you're continuing the zero waste goal of the event. So that's commendable. There we have vendors using compostable materials, and we also have volunteers who are helping sort the material to salvage it. So thank you for that.
Thank you for
Love
pointing that out. We are collaborating with our sustainability team right here and following all the current guidelines. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Anyone else? All right, I'll be there Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our final item under tonight's petitions and communications is an update to council regarding the Charter Review Committee's progress to date. Would staff and the Charter Review Committee representatives here to provide the update, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor. Heading to the podium right now are Chair Sam Taylor and some of the members of our Charter Review Commission. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Taylor for his update.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. My name is Sam Taylor. I am the chair of the Charter Review, and the entire committee is here, so I will let them introduce themselves.
I'm Leonard Giuliano.
Hello, my name is David Matthews.
Hey, good evening. I'm Cheryl Lovell from Ward 3.
Good evening, Seth Patterson from Ward 1.
So thank you for allowing us this time, and thank you very much for moving us up on the agenda. So they didn't all have to wait, including me, till the very end. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Rogers, for facilitating that. So as you know, we're formed in March to take a look at our charter. And our charter, while not as old as Fish, as you found out, they're 60 years old. The charter is only about 50 years old. And it's never had a comprehensive review in that time. It's been updated many times. I think it was 12, I think she told us altogether. Of course, when we became a city and county, there were some major ones. We passed legislation that went into our charter a few different times. But it's never really looked at with a fine-tooth comb. So some of the things we're looking at, and I'm not going to read them all, but some of the things are really out of date. The preamble. Well, that's from 1974. It's really old. A lot of provisions to our transition to a city and a county. That was over 20 years ago. It's no longer new. It's no longer relevant. There's a lot of things about notices and publishing, about where do we put it? Like one thing that's up on a slide later is the budget. It's in there that if somebody wants to come, they can come here. And information, we got that online. We got so much stuff online. And a lot of the stuff in 1974 online meant you drew a line on the floor and set it on it. That was a complete different world back then. So it is really about time we did that. Another thing, the last bullet point you see there, adding references to county along with city and municipal. There are many places in there where it refers to municipal rules, and that's it. We do have county responsibilities. That was a huge responsibility that we took on. So if I get the next slide, I don't have a clicker. So here are some of the other things, the languages on polling places. Most people do it by mail-in ballot right now, and it's so much more efficient, so much cheaper and easier for everybody involved. And they can just drop it off, which is open 24/7 in most cases. So we're looking at, do we take this out? Should it be in the charter in the first place, or should it be in code? Because there are a lot of things in the charter that really we're looking at. Should it be in the code instead of other thing? The county council vacancies. There have been a couple of times I looked it up, once in 2013, once in 2015. We didn't get the appointment completely done in those 30 days. Because a council member steps down. You got 2 meetings a month. If it's just after a meeting, you can't violate any of the open meetings laws, so the council can't talk about it, separately about who they're going to appoint. 30 days is really hard, and it is standard in most places for 60 days. So that one, even though we have made no decisions up to this point about what to recommend, and we are a recommending body, it would be up to the council to put it on the ballot. And it's up to the citizens to make any changes whatsoever to our charter. That's one we're probably going to be looking, and it probably will be in there. So don't be surprised. Everything else we're still working on. There's, the question, should the council have to meet twice a month? They probably would, even if we didn't have that requirement, because it's necessary, but why require it? And then there's a few things, conflict of interest in voting needs to be cleaned up. Most of these are red line changes, just minor changes that we would do. The next slide, please. Emergency ordinances, and this one caught me off guard. If there's an emergency and you pass an ordinance, it doesn't take place, it doesn't come into effect for 8 days.
Yeah, we found that out.
An emergency? Well, by 8 days later. So we're looking at that. And of course, how does that work? You see the one about municipal legislation, special meeting business, the publication by website, which I mentioned before. There's all these things that really on a document from 1974 It's held up pretty well, you know, it's a pretty good document for being so old. The paper's a little yellow around the edges, but it's holding up really well. But still, do we need to publish everything in the newspaper? We can publish things in full right on our website. And then there's ways people can get it otherwise. It can be here. So many ways that could save the taxpayers money. Not that I want, you know, not to give the money to the newspapers to, you know, help them survive, but that's not our role, is to help them survive. Our role is to serve our citizens. So we'll look at that. Next slide, please. The boards and commissions, and this one caught me off guard. Nowhere does it reference alternates, alternative appointments to boards and commissions. Should we put that in? We got to talk about that. And for boards and commissions, it says they can be removed for just cause at the pleasure of council. Well, which one is it? For just cause or at the pleasure of council? It's conflicting. So there's a lot of these little things. And there's the one about the copies of the budget at the municipal building. Why not the website? You know, most people don't want a big document 3 inches thick that has everything in there that they pick up. Or even they don't even want a CD of it because most people don't have CD players anymore. Another thing we thought of, and we haven't really talked about, a lot of these things we haven't talked about in detail yet because we were just formed in March. And here it is, June. We've been meeting twice a month and still, you know, for 2 hours each time, there's a lot of things we're going through. And I do have to give a lot of kudos to your attorney, Nancy Rogers, who has been there, and Jeff Wilson, the consultant. They have just been amazing at getting us all the information we need. Our IGAs, nobody ever thinks about this. It requires a 2/3 vote. Well, why not? Well, why? Other contracts, which might be even bigger, you know, you can do with a majority. Why are IGAs so special? Something we're going to look at. Next slide. We might be about out of slides. That is the last slide. Now, of course, you know, when we formed, everybody came after us, said, you want to change our government to make it like county commissioners. Well, you know, we are looking at the form of government. What we discovered, though, is, you know, there's been talk about maybe you elect the mayor or the leader from the body. People in Broomfield like having a mayor elected at large. We found that out from, there was a study back in April, I think, wasn't that, Seth? Yeah, back in April, people like electing a mayor at large. So, you know, that's probably not a recommendation. So they also like, and we've discovered this in a lot of surveys and, you know, from the very vocal 24 people that have given us a lot of feedback. They also like a lot of representation. They like the strong manager style of government. We'll continue to talk about these. What we're talking about a lot is the size of council. We've got some information comparing county commissioners, the various city councils. And we've actually had discussion about increasing the size to 15 people, you know, hearing that there is so much to do, so many boards, so many committees, so many duties you have to attend as county commissioners and municipal, that maybe you need some extra people on there. But then we realized, you know, councils don't work in a divide and conquer, because you get elected by the people. You need to represent all the people, even if you have 2 people that are elected by the same people. You feel you need to do that. And that's one of the strengths of a city council system. But I did notice that almost every other city has less council members, except for Denver and Lakewood. Denver, I think it's 13, Lakewood has 10. A lot of the other ones have 8 and 6 city council people. And so we'll think, why? What are they doing or not doing that maybe our council is doing or could have somebody else? Maybe there's a FTE or 2 on staff that does, you know, separate reporting that works for the city manager or something. We'll look at that. We'll make recommendations on that. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. We're trying to wrap up by November. If we need more time, we're not going to be shy. We're going to ask you for more time. because we want to do this right. We're hoping it'll get reviewed again in another 10 years, not wait another 50. Strictly oversight, but we want to make sure if it does happen to wait 50 years that, this document can stand the time. A few things that the committee members wanted to make sure that I did mention, that we have received a lot of public input through emails, through our town hall, one-on-one conversations, amazing amount of conversations. Although one city council member, and I forgot to point out that Council Member Ward and Council Member Marsh Holshin are also on the committee as the city council reps, making sure that give us information, so giving council members if they ask more information as the process goes along. Well, most people don't know about this. We don't have a budget to advertise what we're doing. It is there. We've in the Be in the Loop and various things, but it's not like we have banners saying, hey, we're reviewing the charter. Because even though people are very passionate about their form of government, when we start talking about the preamble and adding the word and county after municipal, you can almost hear the glaze in people's eyes start to form. Some of it's very boring. So wanted to make sure you knew about that. And we were offered, and while we didn't want to do a lot of presentations from every group, there was one, and this was on the formation of the county. Some of the people that were very involved in why did we become a county? Why did we split from Weld County, Jefferson, Boulder, Adams County to be our own? And why were the forms of government we have now, why were those in place? So we are having a presentation a week from today on the 20th. The entire population is invited to attend. I don't know if we'll have room. I don't know if you'll be excited or not because most of it's a video, but you are welcome to attend. And that'll give us a lot more information on the history of why we are like we are. Again, we'll probably present it. Most of the information we put here when we present it to you is probably going to be one of those things where you look at it and staff looks at it and says, well, we should have put all this on a ballot a long time ago. A lot of it will be looked at and some of it will be controversial. How you deal with that, if you split it up into 2 ballots, 3 ballots, all on one, that is up to you guys. But some of it might be, if we recommend anything like that. Controversial, other things, if people don't vote at it at a 90% approval rate, it would shock me because it's like, yeah, why? But we'll see what happens when we get there. I really appreciate this body that has been chosen to do this. Our viewpoints are very diverse, our discussions robust. And being a body that's separate from the government and a recommendation body, we can meet and talk to each other and email and not have to worry about violating any laws because it all comes out in the meetings anyway. And we have absolutely no power, nor do we want any. So you are welcome to email me. My email's on the website. Got any questions? We do get, like I said, lots of email from the citizens, which I'm really happy. And if we get more, I'd like even more. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And thank you all for stepping up to serve on this committee because it is an arduous task, but in my opinion, long overdue. So I appreciate you. I do have one question, but first we do have public comments available on this item. If anybody who would like to speak, please come to the podium.
I actually just had a question. Dr. Carolyn, I just had a question. If we could just boil it down to maybe 3 or 4 points of, at the end of the day, what will we have? Is it recommendations to restructure governance? Is it a recommendation of restructure city council? Is it just updating a document? Because I heard a lot of different things and I commend all of you for doing this. This is an enormous task, but still in my mind, it's a little bit fuzzy in terms of at the end of the day, we're going to have 3 or 4 things, and that's why we're doing this.
Maybe we'll have 0, maybe we'll have 20. We don't know yet.
Okay, so let me phrase my question like this. What's the outcome? Because some of the things were government related things that we were going to change. And that's different from just taking out, an adjective here and an adverb there. So, and that's significant. So that's why I was asking the question.
Sure, Mr. Taylor, would you like to clarify?
Sure, I do have one goal when all this is said and done, is that our charter is relevant to what we're doing. Whatever we give to the people to vote on, we give to city council and they'll put it on or not, is a relevant document that meets the standards of today that we can feel proud and our city can look at, and we operate this way. Whether it's in exactly the same form of government as we have now or radically different, which I doubt, could be though. I want it to be relevant and a document that people of Broomfield be proud of.
Everything's on the table, Dr. Love.
Welcome to come.
Come on.
Oh, I'd love to hear.
Roxy Jula Lockmore. I came to a couple of the meetings and it is a daunting task. I'm not sure how far and how good this is going to turn out, but I would extremely encourage the public to find the charter, which isn't the easiest thing to do in our computer system with the city and county of Broomfield. Find the charter and look at it and read it. There's not that many pages. You'll be surprised. There's not that many pages to the charter. There's a lot of amendment items, but there's not that many pages to the charter to read, write down notes, whatever, and come to the meetings. Come and join, sit there and listen, be educated on where and how things are going to. So please come to the meeting. We would appreciate everybody and anybody that's interested to please come to the meetings and see what's going on with your city and county of Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to be heard on this item? Then I'll go to council member questions, comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
No real questions. Just want to thank the chairman and the committee members for your work on this project. It's a huge deal, and twice a month. It's a big commitment. It's bigger than every other committee that we have, and I just want to thank you guys for the work. And I did appreciate the updates. This is the first time I had a feeling of what you guys are doing. I think all those bullet points that you had up there were right on. It all makes a lot of sense to me. So looking forward to the next update here in the future. And hopefully a final update before I'm finished here on council.
Thank you. Any other council member questions, comments? Well, I just want to tell y'all my relationship with the charter started when I was first elected in 2017. And I wanted to read it, find out what my responsibilities and roles were as a new council member. And I kept getting annoyed because it kept referring to the council members as he, him, his. It was only male pronouns when referring to the mayor, the council members, the manager, the attorney, basically everybody. It was all male pronouns. So I asked my colleagues, and I think our council was half women at the time, why hasn't this been changed before? And they threw up their hands and said, oh, it has to go on the ballot. I'm like, yeah, well, let's put it on the ballot then. And we did. And at that time, there was also another provision that required council members to be served in person for meeting notices. So somebody had to drive to all 11 houses and hand deliver stacks of paper for us to get meeting notices. So they tacked that question on to the pronoun question to make it gender neutral and use titles. And they added on, and we could be electronically served. So we did two little changes there, and it passed with 75% of the vote. So, don't assume that it's going to be 90%. I couldn't understand why anybody wouldn't vote for that. But those were two of the first things that I did when I got elected. And I think this is just more of the same. We really need to modernize this and determine if the current Broomfield is being served by the old charter. Are we governing in a way that meets the needs of the community? Because we're double the size. And so I think that this process is going to unfold. And I know that you guys have a December date, a target date, but if you need more time, none of this would be going on a ballot until November 2024. So I would assume that if you needed more time, if you're already meeting twice a month, that's a lot. You could come back and ask for more time. It shouldn't be rushed. It should be inclusive. It should be bringing the public along with you like you're doing. So I commend you for that. And I just wanted to give you that support.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if we don't get done by the November date, I promise to update former Mayor Pro Tem, just personally.
Well, thank you all for the update this evening. Keep up the great work. We look forward to the June 20th historical perspective on why we are the way we are. What time is that, Mr. Taylor?
Good question. Attorney Rogers?
It's 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
1
Yeah,
o'clock,
1
and
o'clock, 1 o'clock.
it's
It's right here. I believe.
Talk in the council chambers.
wonderful. Anybody's interested, June 20th, 1 p.m. in the council chambers. Thank you. All right, we'll move to general public comment next. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items not listed elsewhere on this evening's agenda. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Lois Vanderkoy, Broomfield Heights. I've been involved in oil and gas since 2017 because I'm concerned about community health and climate. Some of you haven't been as involved as others of you, and there is political fallout and legal considerations in dealing with these complicated matters. And you have budgetary constraints. Please keep in mind that budgets represent what we value. I read the oil and gas update and was relieved and pleased to read about staff work on these matters. I especially appreciate Dr. Weisner's work. That being said, I was confused by staff's quick and strong no when Councilmember Lim requested putting notification of swabbing and separator maintenance on the dashboard. I was surprised by a later dashboard response saying that our inspectors were not able to provide reliable and valid data with daily visits to the pads. Why can't extraction notify us when swabbing or maintenance starts? Are they that clueless and disorganized? Do they only care when they legally have to? Why wouldn't daily visits to pads by our inspectors provide enough valid data to be of use to residents? How long does swabbing and maintenance take? Wouldn't some notification be better than none? Who does the dashboard and why does it get so complicated? We hoped we would spend less money and labor after wells went into production, but our oversight has indicated problems and we need ongoing investigation. I know that we picked up on some significant leaks recently. Can't our FLIR camera be used more frequently? Earthworks camera picked up on VOCs not captured by our monitoring, and extractions monitoring is less reliable and valid than ours. Is staff forced to tiptoe around extraction for some reason? Civitas can talk a good game, but has not earned our trust due to the human and mechanical errors we have caught. Unfortunately, this leads to ignorance as to what staff does and we end up pushing staff to do more. We've gathered valid data about adverse impacts, and I encourage you to continue fighting for protection. It may not be a matter of a lot of money, but more a matter of focus, expertise, and intention to inform the public and hold extraction accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment generally? All right, moving on. There's no one online. Council's community and event updates are next. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I'd like to welcome a guest this evening, Alejandra Mungia Cuevas, a constituent services representative for Congresswoman Brittany Patterson. She's here to introduce herself to Broomfield, our community, and tell us a little bit about what she does. Ms., please correct me. Say your name for me.
It's Alejandra Mungia Cuevas.
Mungia Cuevas. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name is Alejandra. I'm with Representative Patterson, and I'm here to introduce myself and just share a little bit of information about what we do and what our office does. I handle veteran issues, so anything veteran related. If you are a veteran or know veterans who are struggling with the VA, such as getting appointments or getting disability claims, the PACT Act is really a big thing right now going around the VA. So I would be a point of contact for that. And then we have my colleagues, such as Alma, who handles passports. So if anyone is planning to leave on a trip and maybe still waiting for their passport, that is someone you can reach out to and she will help you with that. And then we also have services such as IRS, as well as Social Security and Medicare. So if you guys are having issues with any of those agencies, please feel free to reach out to our office at 303-274-7944. We are here to help you. So I will leave some of my business cards in the back if anyone wants to reach out to me after today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandra. Thank you for being here tonight. All right. Does any member of council have an update this evening? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick updates. This last week, I attended the neighborhood meeting for the proposed development at Lowell and Midway townhome development. Since it's going to come before us at some point, I stayed in a listening role, just trying to listen to residents. So I just wanted to, the residents expressed concerns regarding traffic and parking, I think was the major two things that they expressed to developers. So I'm looking forward to that coming before us in the future. And then on June 29th, Mayor Pro Tem Tajewski, Mayor Castriota, and myself are holding a Ward 1 community meeting. This will be for any residents of Ward 1 who want to come and just talk to us about whatever it concerns them. We're holding it at Rails End Beer Company, which is just on 116th, just west of Maine at 5:30 p.m. And I want to shout out to our great local small business in Ward 1, Rails End, for providing us their meeting space free of charge. So anyone who wants to come, June 29th at 5:30.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I had the opportunity as a representative to CC4CA to attend the annual retreat that was just held last week. CC4CA is Colorado Communities for Climate Action. At the retreat, we updated the policy statement, which is done every 2 years. We did a legislative review in light of climate issues, which included more state funding for sustainable infrastructure and residential electrification tax credits, discussion of land use, the land use bill, and with the lens of climate, and the scaling down of the ozone legislation, which its official name was Protect Pollution Act. Those of us who were involved in testifying for the Protect Pollution Act will be involved with testifying before the interim committee this summer that was established by that act. We also took the opportunity to discuss emerging technologies, which we anticipate will be a subject coming forward in the near future, both at the regulatory state agencies and in the legislature. These emerging technologies include carbon sequestration, a green hydrogen and geothermal energy. So it was a good retreat and good opportunity to get together with local electeds and staff from throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let everyone know this past Tuesday, which was the 6th of June, the mayor and myself had a town hall with Skystone HOA and their residents. We had probably about 20 or 30 people show up. Next one for that is going to be September 13th, I believe, at 4:30 for those Skystone residents. And then I also have received word that the Vantage Point flats and lofts and all those properties associated at Vantage Point would like to have a town hall with Councilmember Delgadillo and you as well. So I will be planning that in the near future. Other than that, I don't have any other updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. And I'll just share that I also went on the CC4CA retreat with Councilmember Lim. And I would be sharing out the exact same information. So I'm going to just ditto that and then just share the route up there because I went after the majority had gone up, that I actually took the Bustang Pegasus from Golden up to Vale. And I just want to say that was amazing. And it was a great ride. I've never gone without going with my family. So it was amazing. And there's also the Bustang service going from the Broomfield station to, and Councilmember Ward's gonna love me for this, for sharing all this, that you can actually go straight to Rocky Mountain Park on that same service. It's gotta be about the same, and you can skip the timed entry stamp. So definitely CC4CA retreat was good, but that Bustang service is amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. So this last week was a big Rocky Flat Stewardship Council week. We had our meeting on Monday. We talked about a number of things. Most importantly, our annual review of all the monitoring that's done out there. Most of it is done with water wells. The big thing that we have coming up is the triennial review of that stewardship council, and that's where each of the jurisdictions that have a part of that Rocky Flat Stewardship Council gets to decide, are we going to continue this and continue our participation in it? So that happens regularly, and that's coming up. So that will be a decision for Broomfield Council to make. The other thing was on Wednesday, we restarted our on-site tours of Rocky Flats, which is something that hasn't happened since 2019. This was my first opportunity to go out onto the Rocky Flat site, to be on the property where the most contaminated area, or around the most contaminated area is, looking at some of those monitoring that are in the streams, looking at some of those wells, and of course the elk that continue to call that place home. It's like a big protected prairie. Not a whole lot to see, but a whole lot to understand what used to be there. And so getting to drive in on the main drive, which used to be Main Street, for this basically city that was set up there at Rocky Flats, was very interesting, and getting to see that. So probably something I don't need to ever do again, but it was definitely one that gives me a lot of information as I continue to serve on this stewardship council. The other thing, earlier in the month, we had the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Community Noise Roundtable. Of course, we continue to look at ways to decrease noise impacts from air flights in and out of Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. This airport, just to clarify, has a Broomfield address, but most definitely is owned by Jefferson County, not Broomfield. But with this, one of the things that we are looking at is those noise sensitive areas. Back in many years ago, there was a published noise impacts map that basically said, here are the here are the communities that are going to be most impacted, and for flights to avoid those areas. We are basically doing an update to this, and so all the communities are putting forward information. We are looking at such things like residential areas, schools, hospitals, noise sensitive natural areas. There's a couple communities that have some bald eagles and some raptor nests, and so looking to avoid those with flights going over them. So looking at updating that, and hopefully this will come with a recommendation to the FAA and get some movement on this to decrease the noise impacts, not just for Broomfield, but also our surrounding communities. And the last thing I wanted to update is just a shout out. This last week, the Soul Hop Ensemble in collaboration with Boulder Opera and Art Song Colorado had a performance here in Broomfield, as well as another one in Boulder about Colorado Sky. And Colorado Sky is a family-friendly shadow puppet opera about a wolf cub named Sky who tries to fit in and make friends in his new home in Colorado. Throughout the opera, Sky tries to connect with various animals and humans in the landscape, but is rejected. Encouraged by his mother, Luna, Sky realizes he has to be himself and howl to the moon to connect with his ancestors. So it was a short little opera. The opera singers were out front, but there were shadows that were displayed in the middle. It was a great opera, great entertainment. And it was so cool, the timing of this with the reintroduction of wolves and just kind of getting to hear more about like the wolves experience within that reintroduction. So if it ever gets to show, I encourage you to go see it. It's a very lovely opera and time well spent. So just want to let you know, and community. Thank you, Mayor.
That sounds fun. Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things happened. The Pride of the Farm at Metzger Open Space is going on, and it's an outdoor theater production where you can really learn about the history of the farm. And I learned that John Metzger was actually the Attorney General at one point, way back in the day. Really interesting story, interactive with the audience. So if you get a chance to check that out, weather permitting. Also, the farmers market is officially open in Broomfield as of today. Councilmember Lim joined me for the ribbon cutting, and it will be open on Tuesday afternoons at the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church. That'll do it for updates. Let's get to the business. Council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. The clerk will read all of the consent agenda items by title, and there will be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Following the clerk's reading of consent agenda items 7A through 7D, we'll ask for public comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 7A through 7D by title?
7A, approval of minutes from the regular meeting of May 23rd, 2023. 7B, resolution number 2023-78, authorizing and approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and Jefferson County for the installation and connection of utility services within the Review Innovation Park filing number 4. 7C, resolution number 2023-83, authorizing and approving an amendment by and between the city and county of Broomfield and Almost Home Incorporated for severe weather activation program services. 7D, resolution 2023-89, authorizing and approving the 2023 subrecipient agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and the city of Boulder as the lead agency for the Boulder Broomfield Regional Home Consortium for tenant-based rental assistance.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in-person. If anyone would like to be heard on these items, please come to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes. Not seeing any takers. Next is public comment from council. Any council member questions or comments? Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions on item number 7B regarding the IGA between Jefferson County and Broomfield for the Verve development. Can we kind of discuss why in this agreement is this commercial property going to be paying residential water rates and not a commercial rate? Like a regular commercial business in Broomfield would?
I'm going to ask Katie Allen. There she is. I was going to say, be phoning a friend and I don't see her at the back.
I think she was trying to
power
hide.
table. Miss Allen, to provide us some background on, oftentimes Councilmember Ward, as Miss Allen is making her way down, what seems to be common sense or reasonable is often questionable after the fact. So Ms. Allen's going to walk us through historically what those conversations were anytime that we are in communication with a neighboring community, and it has anything to do with water, infrastructure, sewer. There are agreements with regards to what we pay for upfront, what we reimburse after the fact, and what type of development is going in initially and after the fact. So in your ward, in particular, with regards to Skystone being surrounded by Jefferson County and bordered by Westminster, these communications regarding any type of development, residential or commercial, always requires us to be at the same table with our municipalities as well as our other counties. The reason I give that introduction is as Katie is looking at the historical part, maybe starting there, Ms. Allen.
Certainly. Katie Allen, City and County Engineer. I will tell you what I do know about this, and you might have to direct me to where it says residential. So this property used to be in the City and County of Broomfield in 1997. And we served water and sewer to properties in Broomfield. There was an agreement that if Broomfield became a city and county, that this property would be de-annexed back to Jefferson County, but we would still provide water and sewer. And those service agreements have been updated a few times through the years. Most recently in 2015, both the wastewater agreement and the water agreement were updated. If this was a regular development, you would see a subdivision improvement agreement if it was platted, or an improvement agreement if not. This agreement serves as both an improvement agreement and also the surety. So instead of a letter of credit, Jefferson County is saying, we have these funds in our budget. So those budgeted funds will be used to complete any improvements in case of default for some reason. This particular agreement is for the construction of main lines. It's not for any commercial lot or any residential lot yet. And the agreement calls for them to pay our current license fees. It also calls for them to pay a certain amount per acre that was established in those service agreements. And doesn't matter if it's residential or commercial. So that's what I know. What I still need help with your question on residential.
So on the packet, first page, let me find the bullet point.
Ms. Allen, it says end users will pay residential rates.
Yes, the fourth bullet point from the bottom towards the end. Like Ms. Hoffman said.
Yeah, I would have to probably get with our finance director and learn more of the history of that part. Because this is the rates, not the license fees, which is really where I am more helpful.
Let us check it out and we'll get back to you.
Okay, and then the second thing I wanted to ask about is within that same bullet point relates to the mills that they will pay end users of wastewater and water services in the non-airport related area also paid Broomfield an annual amount equal to 13.894 mils, or what was equivalent to the city in 2000. What exactly are those mills? Why are they paying that? And why is it not updated to 2023 mills? Because obviously this is before Broomfield became a consolidated city and county, and we didn't have those county mills added on.
I'm going to have Miss Allen take a crack at it, even though she's looking at me saying, oh,
please no.
Jennifer Hoffman, please don't put me on the spot like that.
I do know that those terms were negotiated in the 2015 update, and that was done between the finance director at the time and the city manager's office and council. So I don't know that. That's not something I can answer. I'm sorry.
Okay. I guess my last question is going to be, what happens if this IGA doesn't go through? Like, what happens to their project? what happens for Broomfield?
So I'm going to answer that from a staff agreement perspective and not a technical perspective. Part of the transition, and we'll dig into the background on 2015. It's just not something that we can answer on the fly. There were so many negotiated discussions and agreements when we were becoming a city and county because of the existing conversation within the constitutional agreement that we could no longer annex. Understanding what those trade-offs were and not wanting to get into a back and forth with any, whether it be Weld County, Adams County, Jefferson County, or Boulder County, there were significant conversations that were happening with regards to land use and connections. So we have as you know, Councilmember Ward, anytime you're talking about transportation and being a master planned community, so you have your comprehensive plan and your master plan, we all have a really good sense back then of what we wanted where from a 50,000 foot degree. And understanding what was going to require a lot of infrastructure and sewer and pipes. Building in a CPI to be able to say the water rates now are X, but in 20 years, when you actually develop, we're going to be charging you what existing rates are. People don't make deals based on that. So if we do not, quite frankly, our fiduciary duty and the agreements that we've had on the table in order to continue with these relationships and IGAs, it would not be advisable nor recommended. I would recommend that council's discussion is you approve the IGA, and we'll dig into those specifics on that 2015. But if we start setting a precedence that based on a 2015 agreement that current council doesn't agree with, that's a perilous path.
Okay, thank you. I'll save my comments for later.
Just to clarify, we're only agreeing, we're not agreeing to the first page of the memo. We're only agreeing to the resolution, which is the authorizing the installation and connection of utility services. We're not agreeing to any kind of rates, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment really quickly on another item 83 and to thank Manager Hoffman and Director Dan Casey for providing a little more information on our contract with Almost Home. They had referenced that 127 people were able to get off the streets of Broomfield last winter and spend a night on a warm bed thanks to the program. And sorry, I lost my file on my phone, it closed. But I asked what, who were these folks? Where were they from? Where were they found? 41% had been on the street or in a tent. 39% were in a car. 10% had, this was a question of where they spent the last night before. The 10% had been in a hotel or motel. 8% were doubled up with, couch surfing with friends or family. And 2% had, in other circumstances, maybe they'd been in a shelter in the hospital or incarcerated actually. And just noting that the number of people who have died on the streets outside in the Denver metro area in the last 5 years has just exploded. It's like up 94%, and large part due to COVID. But and I think the last year data available, it's 269 people died alone outside on the streets. So I just wanted to take a moment to commend the city. I think this is a really terrific, humane program, not terribly costly really, and probably saves lives, and something we should continue to support and help these people avoid unpleasant circumstances outside and hopefully get back on their feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member questions? All right, Before asking for a motion, I want to remind everyone that item 7B is an intergovernmental agreement and requires 2/3 approval of council per the charter. Is there a motion by council that the recommendations contained in the staff reports for agenda items 7A through 7D be approved? Councilmember Shah?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Ward?
I just want to say thank you, staff, for looking into 7B. I think it'll be helpful for us to understand more because I do have some concerns about a commercial property paying a residential rate for water and utilities, especially since we've already updated our water rates, et cetera. And then there's more information on that mills and why it's that, not the current mill structure and what it all is going to pay for. So I
You
just
bet.
want to
We're,
say thank you.
We're happy to do that. And just a quick note on that, Councilmember Ward, I just wanted to highlight one piece that Ms. Allen said, and it's not really the rates that are key with regards to the taps, it's the water tap amount. And so this is the current water tap amount. So that's not it's not subject to a pre-agreement. It's very similar to a lot of the conversations that we're having about prior business development agreements. They don't look so reasonable now. But at the time when we say we're going to do A, B, C, and D to an existing community, in order for a community to buy off on what we want to do, we agree to 4 different things. 15 years later, those 4 things may not seem as relevant or poignant as they were when we agreed. But agreements are they're not only are they important, but we appreciate the question so that we can clarify under these circumstances why that agreement was made.
Thank you. Any other discussion on consent agenda? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We have one item for the Board of Social Services consideration this evening, acknowledging a review of expenditures and electronic benefit transfers, EBT, for January, February, and March 2023. The meeting of the Board of Social Services is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Anderson.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Delgadillo.
Here.
Hinkle. Jezerski. Leslie. Lim.
Here.
Marsh Holshin.
Here.
Schaff.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Thank you. A quorum is present. Board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And Director Casey is making his way down to the podium. It's hard to believe, council and community, that it's been 3 months already. I mean, it literally seems like we just had Mr. Casey join us on this issue.
Yeah, it's it does come quickly. It's the quarterly update that seems monthly. So
That's good.
good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the board. I'm Dan Casey. I'm the Director of Human Services. And I just wanted to quickly go over the EBT expenditures for the period January 1 through March 31st of 2023. Before I start that, I do have a couple of other quick announcements to make. One, thank you, Councilmember Cohen, for your comments about the SWAP program. We also feel like that's a very critical program and very much needed in our city and county. 2 is, I know Manager Hoffman at the last council meeting had talked a little bit about the Department of Human Services getting our Distinguished Performer Award for the 3rd year in a row. I'm very proud of my staff and my management team and all of the hard work that we do. That is through the state department, Colorado Department of Human Services, and you have to meet 75% or better on all of your measures throughout the entire year. That's our child welfare, adult protection, and also all of our public assistance programs, Medicaid, TANF, all of the things we'll be talking about today in the EBT memo. So I wanted to just throw another shout out to all of our staff. And then I have a special guest in the audience today. We have a new Deputy Director for the Department of Human Services, started at the beginning of this month, Chris Dewhurst. So just, you can stand and wave.
Congratulations, Chris.
I think most folks already know Chris. He was our workforce manager for several years. Also worked at the State Department. Back and forth. He's been in Broomfield several times. I think 2 or 3 stints with Broomfield. So we're really excited to have Chris in that role. And now for the fun stuff, the EBT report. Don't have a lot to report that hasn't already been talked about, but I will highlight a couple things again for you. I know that we have talked in the past about the pandemic and the public health emergency ending, and also our SNAP max allotments going away. So you will probably recall that in March, we had talked about the max allotments ending, and folks that were eligible for food assistance were receiving max allotments are returning back to their pre-pandemic eligibility disbursements. And then also the Medicaid, what we refer to as the locked-in report, or everyone that was on Medicaid or eligible for Medicaid during the pandemic remained on Medicaid. So that also ended on May 11th. This requires quite a bit of work for our staff. We've got to do what's called a redetermination for every Medicaid case. The state has given us about 18 months to complete that. We have done some pre-work on that, so we don't know that it will take us the full 18 months, but it is a lot of additional work. That work is ongoing. We keep doing that. And as I shared before, probably about 1 in 4 individuals on Medicaid may lose that benefit. And again, that's not always a bad thing. That means that they're more gainfully employed, or their employer is providing insurance, or maybe a significant other has insurance through their employer. Kind of the highlights are TANF, Temporary Aid for Needy Families. That program has seen an increase in the same time period from last year of about 10%. SNAP, which is our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, historically referred to as food stamps, now called SNAP. We've seen about a 20% increase in that program. Medicaid, we've seen a 17% increase. And then our overall services that we provide under this EBT report, we've seen about a 12.8% overall increase within the department. Chris and I were talking earlier today, and CCOB, as of April 23, our unemployment rate was about 2.3, which is really good, potentially, maybe not so good for some other reasons, but that's actually very good for us to see that trending in the right direction. And the state unemployment rate, same time period, was 2.4%. So we're just a little bit below, doing a little bit better than the state. And then the last highlight I would like to address is actually, because of the additional workload, the state has offered additional allocation. I shouldn't say offered, has given additional allocation. For this fiscal year, we'll see about $92,000 coming into our county admin line. And then we anticipate in our 23-24 fiscal year, about $122,000 additional in our county admin line. And that pays for our staff, and it pays for the overtime, and it pays for the additional workload. That isn't direct client benefit. That's for the operations, the administration of the program. So we're grateful for that. At this point, I don't believe that we would need to add additional staff. We're looking at that for 2024 potentially, but right now I think we're fine. Caseloads are manageable. Also, knock on wood, our turnover rate has been very low in human services, so we're happy about that. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Casey. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone who would like to be heard would come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Roxy Jewel Lockmore. We get these reports in the rear, but it also shows, I think, that they're asking for more money out of the budget. Is that correct? No. So this is not going to the budget for more?
So here, I'll answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Yes, what I'm reporting on tonight is our expenditures that are in the rears. So it takes a little bit of time to reconcile the numbers from the State Department and also jive them with our internal finance department. This is within budget, so we're not asking for additional funding. Those if we did ask for additional funding, that would come during our budget time for a 2024 budget. But this is expenditures on our budget. And if you, I can show you the memo after the meeting, and it breaks down where we're at with our budget through that portion of the year. But we're not asking for additional funding right now.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Any other public comment on this item? All right, going to council member questions, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Casey. Just one quick question on the Medicaid redeterminations. So you have to, the state's giving you 18 months to make the redeterminations on everybody that was previously on Medicaid through the pandemic. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so we were not doing any redeterminations during the pandemic. We've got about 8,000, between 6,000 and 8,000 recipients of Medicaid benefits just in Broomfield. We had previously received information from the state on that locked-in report, so we've been pre-working some of that. One of the things that we're asking from Human Services and also from the state is for folks that are on Medicaid to go into the PEAK system and update their information, because that'll help kind of mitigate or eliminate some of that time. But yes, the potential burden on all counties across the state of Colorado Department of Human Services and the federal government have said it's going to take about 18 months to get through all Medicaid applications to do redeterminations. Again, some of those will get ahead of time. We'll know that folks are no longer eligible through other avenues, or if people are updating their information, they may fall off sooner.
Okay, do those individuals, let's say someone is going to lose benefits through redetermination, does that person keep benefits through that point? Or does losing benefits ever apply retroactively to like the end of the emergency?
No, their benefits would end at the time of the redetermination.
And are you doing it like on a rolling basis where you do one person redetermine, they fall off? Or does everybody wait to fall off until you're done with all the redeterminations? I guess?
That's a hard answer, but the answer is yes. It's a little bit of both. So folks that were in their redetermination window will wait until their redetermination was scheduled, whether they're still eligible or not. And then folks that may no longer be within the redetermination window, that's expired, if you will, we'll put those individuals at the head of the list, if you will. So prioritizing, trying to get through all of the workload to go through every single individual. Usually what happens is you're on a redetermination period. So every 12 months or every 36 months, you're redetermined. Because we didn't do that for quite some time, there was no one that was gone through the redetermination. So we're backlogged and just trying to catch up. But yes, we'll do, some of that is rolling. Some of it is who's due for a redetermination now, who is not due for redetermination until 12 or 24 or 36 months from now.
I guess my question is there a way to use that 18-month window to keep people getting benefits for as long as possible?
I guess the answer is yes, if they're not eligible for redetermination. If they're no longer eligible for those benefits, they would fall off at that time. I think another way to answer your question is we've really been pushing both in our department and at the state level. You've probably heard radio ads or seen TV ads about other ways to get insurance, Connect for Health Colorado, some of those other options. Not a great answer for you that maybe some folks aren't, in a position where they can get those benefits from an employer. But again, when we get to that redetermination point, if the individual or the household is no longer eligible, they would end up not being eligible or not receiving Medicaid at that point.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Casey, for this report. I just have, I think, two quick questions. Number one is one of the bullet points is the largest increases we've seen for first quarter of 2023 were for entitlement programs of food assistance, SNAP, Medicaid, and LEAP. Is the LEAP increase due partially, I would assume, to some of the dramatic increases Xcel Energy put on, well, Coloradans in general?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think, yes, a lot of our LEAP increase was because of the high cost of utilities. I also think, and this board probably recalls, About a year ago, we switched to the Goodwill contract so that it's not managed by us, but it's managed by the Goodwill Industries. And they do quite a bit of outreach that we didn't have the capacity to do. That was one of the benefits of going to that contract. So more outreach, higher expenses. I think everything, inflation has increased gas prices and food prices and utility prices. So it's a combination of all of those things.
Okay. And then it says on average for all of the programs we offer, there was a 12.86% increase. How do we compare to other counties across the state? If
That
you
is-
don't know off the top of your head.
Yeah,
that's
that is a
totally fine.
really good question that I do not have the answer to, but I'm sure we can go back and do some research and find that out.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not compared ourselves to our neighboring counties, but I think that's a brilliant idea.
I'm glad I had one brilliant idea for the day. I usually save that for once a month. My last question then is also going to be, have we seen larger increases for year over year from 22, 23 versus years past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think since the pandemic, we have seen larger increases than we had previously seen. There's every now and then there's a year that fluctuates. Some of the longitudinal data is in the report, but yeah, I think we've steadily noticed both on paper and in workload and in employee burnout that we've definitely seen an increase. And it doesn't appear right now to be, it's slowing a little bit, but not going away. We keep gradually having an increase. Board member Henkel had asked a question a few meetings back. Does that correlate with the growth of our county? And the answer was kind of, right? We were seeing a different, I believe our county increase was at 30% and our human services increase was at 26% or something like that. So there's a correlation there. We have more folks in Broomfield now that may be in need, but I also think that we're still trying to catch up from some of that pandemic hangover, if you will.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Any other council member questions for Mr. Casey? All right, seeing none. Next is the board's consideration of proposed resolution number 2023-79-BSS. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2023-79-BSS by title?
8A, resolution number 2023-79-BSS, acknowledging review of expenditures and electronic benefit transfers for January, February, and March 2023.
Thank you. And Councilmember Leslie has joined us remotely, so we'll be doing a roll call vote moving forward. Is there a motion? Oh, thank you, Councilmember Ward.
I move that resolution number 2023-79-BSS be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Schaaf?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll for the Board of Social Services?
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Jezerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Councilmember Leslie, are you on? Can you hear us? I heard something. He's just, you're on mute, Councilmember. Councilmember Leslie, can you hear us? We must be having a technical difficulty, so we'll move on with that. So that did pass. Oh, there you are. Was that an aye vote for the? I think you're still.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
there you are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
still have to keep going.
Oh, it wasn't the last one?
Lim,
It will
Yes.
pass.
Marsh Holshin,
Yes.
Chaff,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Now it passes unanimously. Thank you all. And seeing no further business before the Board of Social Services, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, team. Congratulations again, Mr. Dewhurst. You're welcome. Did you want to say a few words or you're good for now? I mean, go on. Because
Well, Chris Dewhurst, Deputy Director of Human Services. Just super excited to be in this role. I'm looking forward to serving this community as I learn my new role. So anyway, thank you for the warm welcome.
thank you. Thank you for stepping up to serve. We appreciate y'all. Our first item under council business this evening is the consideration of a motion to postpone indefinitely proposed ordinances number 2189 and 2192 regarding firearms. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize. Ms. Rogers?
Thank you, Mayor.
I just like bypassed it. Sorry.
I looked over and I was thinking, oh, Nancy.
In the bathroom.
Yeah, there you go. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, council members, community. Nancy Rogers, a city and county attorney. Tonight, we are going to be discussing ordinances 2189 and 2192, which is the last in the set of the firearm ordinances. Next slide. As background, following a council request, we held study sessions and executive sessions on the possibility of joining other communities in the region to pass local firearm ordinances. On November 29th of 2022, we had first reading on 9 ordinances. All were approved on first reading, some with amendments. On January 10th, 2023, we had second reading on those ordinances. 7 ordinances were adopted and are currently in effect. 2 were tabled until tonight, pending state legislation. Those 2 are increasing the age to purchase a firearm to 21 in Broomfield and a waiting period of 10 days and a competency requirement to purchase a firearm in Broomfield. On February 7th, 2023, council sent a letter to the governor and state legislative leadership asking that they pass legislation on a statewide level and address some of these issues that Broomfield was trying to address locally, but knew that there was problems when you look at other jurisdictions that don't have similar laws that are our neighbors. Next slide. The state this past session passed various firearm legislation. The 2 that relate to our ordinances tonight is Senate Bill 23-169, which increased the minimum age to purchase a firearm to 21. And they also passed House Bill 23-1219, which established a 3-day waiting period statewide before you can pick up a firearm that you purchase. Both of these laws are being challenged in federal court right now. Those cases just started, but they remain pending. Additionally, there was also federal lawsuits filed against other communities that passed an assault weapons ban and a rapid fire trigger ban. Those are also pending, just as a little background. Next slide. So the 2 tabled ordinances were 2189, which would establish a minimum age of 21 to purchase or accept the transfer of a firearm, very similar to the state law. And the second one was 2192, establishing a 10-day waiting period and the competency requirement. The motion to postpone indefinitely was suggested by staff because of council's direction that they called on the state to take action, and the state did take action in this space. A motion to postpone indefinitely is a Robert's Rules of Order mechanism to pretty much delay this indefinitely. It does not come back to a future date. So I can respond to more questions, but that's the end of the presentation, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Roxy Jula Lockmore. I would encourage you to go ahead and follow what is being recommended for indefinite suspension of these 2 items. They're not necessary for our community right now anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I don't see anyone online. So questions from City Council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from council? There are no questions from council. So thank you, Ms. Rogers. First is council's consideration of ordinance number 2189 on third reading. Is that right? Okay, sounds weird. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2189 by title? And these ordinances, the motion would be that if to postpone indefinitely would be that ordinance number 2189 be postponed indefinitely, just an FYI for council. So will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2189 by title?
Ordinance number 2189, amending chapter 9 through 72 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to increase the age to purchase a firearm to 21.
Thank you. Is there a motion, Councilmember Schaaf?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council, I move that council move to postpone consideration of ordinance 2189 indefinitely.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Anderson.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Pink, Jazersky.
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holston,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next is council's consideration of ordinance number 2192 on third reading. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 2192 by title?
Ordinance number 2192, amending chapter 9 through 72 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to require a 10-day waiting period and proof of competence with firearms prior to the sale of firearms.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council postpone consideration of ordinance 2192 indefinitely.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Anderson.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Councilmember Marsh Holston.
Thank you, Mayor. This one has given me pause because I do believe the 10-day waiting period and the education requirement that we proposed originally is beneficial to the people of Broomfield. The 10-day waiting period gives a cooling off period before someone that might hurt themselves or others can take possession of a firearm. Furthermore, the education is important for any type of dangerous weapon that firearms are. There's nothing unconstitutional about these ordinances. They are reasonable restrictions. I'm disappointed that the state chose to piecemeal it and not, kind of half measure it with a 3-day waiting period. I've heard conversations that they may take up education in the future. I'm not confident that they will, but I supported these ordinances at the local level. It's difficult because we have businesses that are affected by it when other communities might not, but at the end of the day, if the state's not going to do it, then I think we should. So I'm not in favor of postponing these tonight. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with my colleague. I've been a strong advocate for educational provision. I really do believe that responsibility requires thorough understanding of how to use a particular tool and how to make sure that it's being used properly. So I'm going to agree with my colleague and would like to see us move with a educational program. I do struggle also though with the issue of 3 days versus 10 days. If we've got 3 days statewide, that's better than what we had before. And it would be hard for us to have a 10-day waiting period and everybody else have a 3-day. That does hurt our businesses. So that part I'm struggling with, but I'm really strongly advocating that we, if not tonight, if not now, that we come back with an educational provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to second what Councilmember Marsh Holston and Councilmember Leslie have said. I do think a 10-day waiting period is better, not only for this community, but statewide. And I am disappointed the state did not take that up, although 3 is definitely better than none. I will vote to postpone indefinitely this ordinance because I don't think we have the educational requirements quite yet nailed down to make this an effective ordinance. So I'd like us to revisit this later on after we've done research and discussions and community engagement about what does that education component look like. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, if Councilmember Henkel was here, she unfortunately could not be. She would note that she is working with a legislator and trying to get the state to take action on the education issue. I'm hopeful that they will take that up and the state will lead in the next legislative session. I will support postponing at this time and echo the comments that we hope that there will be movement in that direction. Did want to note, just as an aside, I think we need to stay aware of the pressing problem we still face. Last night for about 3 hours, the national news with the Denver Nuggets had won the NBA championship. Then at midnight, there were 20 shots and 10 people were shot in downtown Denver. 4 still have life-threatening injuries at Denver Health. And I know I work in Denver. A number of folks today were excited, but also had a palpable concern about going to the parade. Are they safe? And it's really sad that we have to think at a time of celebration that maybe we can't join it because it's not safe on the streets. So hopefully the state will continue this measure, and if not, we can take action on our own. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that, great comments, by the way, from my colleagues, but I do, in concept, I think that an educational requirement is a good idea, but I think that it's really a state issue. If we pass this at any point really on our own, it's going to have very little impact overall, unfortunately. And I do agree with the comment that if we were going to even seriously consider this, I think there's a lot additional. The specifics need to be fleshed out, significantly more. So I couldn't support that tonight, one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Delgadillo,
No.
Jazerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
No.
Lim,
Yes.
Marshall,
No.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
I got that passing 6-3. All right, so thank you all for that. We're getting really close to the 8 o'clock recess. So let's go ahead and take our break now before moving on to the next item. And my apologies for everyone who's been waiting, but it's 7:55. We'll be back at 8:05. Thank you. Our next item under council business this evening is a public hearing and council's consideration of resolution number 2023-61 regarding the submission of Broomfield's 2023 action plan for community development block grant and home investment partnership program funds. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. I see that Ms. King has already joined the podium, and sitting up in the back is also our housing manager, Sharon Tessier. For additional information, Ms. King, introduce the item and walk us through it, please.
There it is. There's your
There it
red
is.
light.
I can
Okay,
hear you.
thank you. Again, Rachel King, Deputy Director for Economic Vitality and Development. Tonight, I'm providing a very brief presentation on the allocation of our Community Development Block Grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and our proposed 2023 HUD Action Plan. Next slide, please. Broomfield receives a regular annual allocation of CDBG funds from HUD due to our status as an entitlement community. As a member of the Boulder Broomfield Home Consortium, we also receive a portion of home investment partnership funds. Typically, communities can use CDBG funds for community development, economic development, and certain types of housing activities. The majority of funds must be used to support low to moderate income residents, and that's defined as being 80% or below of the area median income. Each year, Broomfield is required to submit an annual action plan to HUD, which outlines our CDBG project allocations. We are also required to undergo a public participation process for the action plan, including this public hearing, as well as a 30-day public comment period. Our draft action plan was available for public comment beginning on May 30th, and that comment period will remain open until June 29th. The draft is available through the links in the memo and on the Housing Division website. Requests for translation or accessibility accommodations may be submitted to the office as well. And to quickly note, our home funds are allocated through Boulder as the lead of the home consortium. So those funds are not included in Broomfield's annual action plan. Broomfield's portion of the home funds have historically been and will continue to be, based on your vote earlier this evening, used to support a tenant-based rental assistance program administered by Broomfield's Department of Human Services. Next slide, please. Our proposed 2023 allocations for our CDBG funds are listed here. Primarily, we plan to support housing rehabilitation services for current Broomfield homeowners, various community investment programs, and small business assistance. All programs will serve residents at or below 80% of the area median income. As part of the 2023 action plan, I will also note that we're including additional funding that came into the 2022 action plan program year. This was a result of additional allocation received from HUD at the end of 2022 in the amount of $12,091. Those additional funds have been added into the prior year resources under the 2023 action plan at the direction of HUD. Next slide, please. In summary, staff recommends funding the following priorities for its 2023 plan. Again, housing rehab services for current Broomfield homeowners, community investments, which can include nonprofit support, small business support and technical assistance, and community development projects, small business expansion and relocation assistance. And then, of course, we do have some admin costs as well. Next slide, please. So in closing, we request council recommend for approval resolution 2023-61. And as a reminder, this action would also approve submittal of the 2022 action plan amendment as part of that 2023 action plan. And that's all we have for staff's presentation this evening. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. King. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please step up to the podium. Not seeing anyone. Questions from city council are next. Any members have any questions? Well, then I guess it means your presentation was thorough. Oh, Councilmember Shah.
I will ask my questions. Staff responded to my email, and so I just wanted to make sure that they were on the record. So one of the programs was the single family owner occupied rehab program. And I was curious, this program is set at 80% AMI. And I was curious why this wasn't set at a lower AMI. Could you talk about the specifics of this program? And I believe that there were 3 parts to this program: the single family rehabilitation piece, the mobile home repair grant, and then the urgent home repair grant as well.
That is correct. And thank you for the opportunity to clarify. So yes, HUD regulations allow us to utilize up to 80% of the AMI as a qualifying criteria for this program. We have also found in Broomfield the need to expand the program eligibility in order to offer more accessibility of the services to residents. Prior to 2022, we were administering this program in-house. In 2022, we made the decision to outsource this program to a trusted community partner, Brothers Redevelopment Incorporated. So they now serve as our subrecipient. We found that through utilizing their services, being connected to more contractor networks, et cetera, we were able to expand the number of residents served, and increasing the AMI for this particular part of the program was helping us increase those numbers of residents served. We did decide to keep, as you stated, the mobile home repair and the urgent home repair at lower AMI levels at this point in time. We are considering raising those levels potentially in the future, but we're waiting on additional feedback for that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was curious to me when I saw that the single family rehab program was at 80% AMI or lower, but the mobile home and the urgent home repairs were at 50% AMI. So I was curious why there was that differentiation, and I look forward to the continued conversation and finding out more about that. I would think that they would all be the same AMI, whether it was 80%, whether it was 50%, or somewhere in the middle. But would like to get some more information on that. There wasn't any money, there wasn't any CDBG funds dedicated to the rental housing program. And I was curious why that was, and staff gave me a great understanding of that. And one of the reasons was that CDBG is not a housing grant, and they're restricted from supporting new rental housing construction, but we've been able to do that. So I was curious to find out more about how we are supporting the renters in our community if we are not using CDBG funds.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Yes, CDBG, I think is shocking for some folks to learn. It's not a housing grant. It's a community development block grant. So the types of housing activities that it supports are related to benefits to the community as a whole, rather than benefits to a particular housing project or particular housing services. So we sometimes, both Broomfield and other communities, sometimes use HUD sanctioned loopholes, if you will, in the regulations to support some of these projects. So for example, infrastructure support, that's the type of activity that we've paid for with Crosswinds at Arista as an example, and we use CDBG funds to support that. But it is very difficult in general, and we have to have the right amount of money at the right amount of time for the right project. So it's tricky to build that into the HUD budget every year. Last year, that was kind of an anomaly for Crosswinds. We will continue to analyze those opportunities as they come forward. If there's another project that's the right fit and we have the right budget, then we can certainly review that in additional years moving forward. But for now, we don't have any of those opportunities in front of us. As for other rental activities, we do rely more so on our home funds that we receive from the consortium to support the tenant-based rental assistance program. Home, in comparison to CDBG, actually is a housing grant. And it's very easy relative to CDBG to use for those types of rental assistance activities. So we rely on those funds from home to support that rather than CDBG.
Okay, thank you. And and I, part of that question came up because on the table that it says rental, make sure I get the wording correct, rental housing program. So the reason that we've put money in there in the past is because we've had projects that align with that. But to your point, we can't always count on that there are going to be aligned projects. So that definitely makes sense. So thanks for helping clarify that. The two other questions I have. So one of them is around the small business assistance and any parameters. So this is the enhanced Broomfield program that we have set up. And I guess my biggest concern was ensuring that this is helping small businesses. And looking through the table, it seems like those are all small businesses that we've funded since 2022. So I was happy to see that, and I look forward to continuing to support our small businesses here in Broomfield through that enhanced program. And I know that that's taken some different forms in the last year, well, last 4 years, really. So I look forward to seeing how that continues to improve and continuing to see the small businesses supported in that way. So thanks for all your work on that. And the last question I had was around the homeless assistance programs. These dollars are the CDBG slash CV. And they look to be in excess of the 686,000. Is that correct? And could you tell me a little bit more about the differentiation between the CDBG CV dollars and the CDBG dollars?
Yes, thank you. The CDBG CV dollars were, as indicated, specialty dollars that were allocated due to COVID. They were one-time dollars granted for the 2020 program year. So those funds are pretty close to being expended. We don't see them in each annual action plan after the 2020 plan because they're associated with that grant year. That's why you don't see those on the tables or mentioned in the 2023 action plan. However, all of those activities have been slated for those dollars, and we're continuing to spend those down. A recent example is we have some additional small businesses that were still being impacted by COVID as based on profit and loss statements, balance sheets, et cetera. So they were eligible to receive that CV funding. So we have a few that received them at the end of last year. We also have a contract that's closing out with Fish, and that's their current contract is providing rental assistance using those CV funds again to households that were impacted by COVID. So those funds are winding down, but they are definitely separate from the annual dollars that you'll see in the 2023 action plan, as well as all the additional action plans moving forward. And I will note that the CV funds had pretty significant loosened regulatory restrictions that allowed us to do some different types of activities with the CDBG dollars that we wouldn't normally be allowed to do with regular CDBG.
And those CV dollars, those were much more tied to pandemic related activities, right? You had mentioned rental assistance, non-congregate shelter costs, and small business recovery. So those dollars are much more kind of those urgent needs related to the pandemic. Whereas when those CV dollars aren't there any longer, it's not like we're relying on programs that we set up to utilize those dollars. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. HUD calls it the tieback test, right? Every activity that we support with those CV dollars has to have a coronavirus tieback. So either to prepare, respond, or forget what the third one is, but yes, it has to tie back to that COVID use. And even now in 2023, we still see those impacts. So we're still able to use those final dollars, which is great because we anticipate 100% use of those CV funds.
Excellent. Thank you staff for all your work on this. Mayor and council, thank you for your patience. I just wanted to make sure that information was all out there. It was great information to get. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council? All right, then the public hearing is closed. First is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2023-61. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2023-61 by title?
11B, resolution number 2023-61, approving and authorizing the submittal of the 2023 action plan for community development block grant, CDBG, and home investment partnership program funds.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ward,
I move that resolution number 2023-61 be approved.
be adopted. Thank
Be
you. Is there a
adopted. Thank you.
second?
Second.
Councilmember Shah. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jezerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Our next item under council business this evening is council's consideration on first reading of proposed ordinance number 2209 regarding Broomfield sign code. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, team, for being prompt down here at the podium. We sure appreciate it. Anna Burtonzetti, co-director, is going to walk us through this item. Brandon Rowe, extraordinaire of all things planning, is also here. Ms. Burtonzetti, please introduce the item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. The modernization of the sign code we first introduced earlier this year when we talked about kicking off a multi-year effort to modernize our development requirements, our zoning ordinances, as well as some long-range plans for Broomfield. The sign code was originally adopted back in the 1970s. If I could have the next slide, please. And there have been some updates over time, but what we're proposing this evening or bringing forward for your consideration is a full rewrite and modernization of that sign code. Updating the sign code will allow us to address sign types that have changed over the years, things like the electronic signs, and it will help to improve the usability of the sign code overall. One of the key goals of this modernization is to ensure that we're addressing some of the changing legal landscape around signage and helping to still meet the changing needs of the community. Before I hand it off to Ms. Hartman and Mr. Rowe for the details regarding this ordinance, I wanted to quickly pause and take a moment to clarify for the members of our community that what is being proposed this evening as part of this ordinance is not going to change any existing signs that are in place for our existing businesses. It also is not proposing any changes to existing approvals that are part of planned unit developments or site development plans that have already gone through an approval process with City Council. So these changes would be for new signage. They would be issued permits or be erected after the effective date of such an ordinance. So with that clarification, I will hand it off the presentation to Ms. Hartman to talk about what I mentioned before, the changing legal landscape around signage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. So of course, when we're talking about the sign code, we are going to have to talk about the First Amendment since we are the government regulating speech. And in order to do that, next slide. We need to talk about Supreme Court cases, unfortunately. Next slide. So one of the big cases recently that changed the First Amendment landscape in this area was Reed versus the town of Gilbert. And that is a case where the Supreme Court actually struck down a town's sign code completely because it violated the First Amendment. And this case, in short, really created the need to read standard, is what we kind of call it in shorthand. So if you have to read the sign in order to enforce your sign code, then it's likely that your sign code is unconstitutional after this case. So next slide, please. So what we're doing on the legal side is we are really changing, a lot of governments are now changing their sign codes. So we focus not on the content of the sign, that you have to read the sign to categorize the sign, which was very popular prior to Reed. In those ordinances, you would have real estate signs or political signs. These all might be signs that sound familiar to you. Now, after the Reed case, we should not be regulating by content. And so local governments are shifting the ordinances to regulate the type of sign. So your real estate sign might become a site sign, or your political signs are now yard signs, because those don't regulate the content of the message, just the type of sign. So that's what you're going to see in the regulations before you this evening. Next slide, please. Now, just because some of the sign regulations have been struck down by the Supreme Court doesn't mean we don't have the power to regulate in this area. Local governments do. And we need to do that with reasonable time, place, manner restrictions. And then we want to avoid regulating content in any way. So we've really used those concepts as we've redrafted the sign code and guiding how we're looking at these. So that's what you'll see. That's what Brandon will give you some more detail about as we talk about that.
Thanks, Courtney. Because it's habit, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Brandon Rowe, Principal Planner. Could I get the next slide, please? So this slide probably looks familiar from the study session that we held with you all in March of this year. It provides a quick summary of the types of changes that you're going to see in the code as drafted in the first reading. Those include addressing non-conforming signs, the new categories of signs like were discussed by Courtney, prohibited signs, signs requiring permits. The big one is digital signs, exempt signs, temporary signs, how we calculate sign area for our single tenant and multi-tenant commercial and industrial buildings, as well as some of the administrative adjustments and the special exception process. All of these were outlined in the staff memo, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but happy to answer questions if you have them. Could I get the next slide, please? So the slide that I'm going to focus the most on are some of the changes that were made to the draft code between that study session back in March and tonight. So the first thing is that we've added some additional code language changes that's related to cleaning up cross references in Chapter 2. We removed and relocated a bunch of definitions and amended them that were previously in Chapter 17-04. There were some sign regulations that were referenced in Chapter 1729, which was the interchange influence area. And we removed the sign regulations from that chapter to consolidate everything into the rewritten Chapter 1744, which is the sign code. That helps to simplify it. When folks are looking for sign regulations, they just go to one spot and know where they're going. The other items that we did was we removed proposed language related to the murals and art as was requested by council. The new proposed ordinance only includes a definition of what a mural is for the purpose of the sign code. And that emphasizes commercial messaging. No other regulations on what would be just purely artistic speech for arts or mural are regulated anymore. We've made a number of changes to the yard sign requirements. This includes changing the number of allowed signs and their duration. So previously we had proposed that properties could have 2 or 3 yard signs of varied size based on the lot size for a period of time. We've removed that time duration. We've increased the number of signs that could be included in the lead up to a coordinated election. So 90 days prior to the election, there's an unlimited number of 6 square foot yard signs that can be posted on properties. We've also removed the requirement for posting dates. The code originally had the requirement that the property owner had to write in the date that they posted. We've removed that from the draft language for yard signs. As previously noted, we had referenced 60 days. That was a typographical error. We corrected that to be 90 days to be consistent with the current code. And we've also allowed for fence mounting of yard signs, banners, and site signs. We've revised the wall sign definition, as was previously noted, to include signs that consist of images or text that are illuminated or projected onto the side of a building or a structure. We've also amended the landscape requirements to specify that they need to be water-wise principles. And we've also removed the prohibition or restriction on interactive signs. Those are now permitted. It's not a standalone subject because different types of signs could be interactive, but we allow that now. Could I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So we've done a fair amount of community engagement efforts with this project. We solicited feedback from frequent sign contractor companies early on in the process. Unfortunately, we did not get any feedback from them. We did create a Broomfield Voice page that has been live since that study session back in March. We used weekly community updates and social media posts to spread the word. We communicated directly to the Chamber of Commerce through our partners with Economic Vitality, and we held an open house. That open house was held on April 13th of this year from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We had nobody attend, but we did provide that opportunity to the public. And at that time, we also had some language line translation services available should folks of different languages need help. So the next steps, if approved tonight on first reading, proposed ordinance 2209 would be published in full, and a public hearing and second reading would be scheduled for July 11th of this year. That concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much for the update. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please come to the podium. I don't see any online. Questions from City Council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Marsh Holsha.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one question on the 1744050S, the seasonal signs. Does that include things like garden, like people put like fall or spring or, little garden banners? Are those included in that, or?
The intent is for seasonal decorations, so things that would be spring oriented, if you're a practicer of Easter or things of that nature. So yes.
Okay. That's one question I had.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I have a few questions. There's a note in the memo that a business has to conform to the new sign code when they seek a change in use of property. Can you explain what that involves? I mean, is that like a business moves in and out of a building, a business changes its name, changes ownership within a building?
Happy to answer that question. So a simple name change would not require them to replace the sign. We allow the panels or the face of a sign to be replaced. That's more if a hypothetical, if a facility was a daycare and they move out and then a pet store moved in. That's the change of use that we would anticipate, likely because the signage would need to be changed. But just a simple name change would not require that.
Okay. I asked a question during the study session about light pollution from the digital signs. So there are parameters within the code that deal with how much illumination each digital sign can produce. But is there any provision within the code anywhere, I guess, where the cumulative effect of a lot of illuminated signs within an area would come into play?
Councilmember, that's a great question. So that was the one that I think Courtney and I spent the most time doing some research on. And there is not a lot of industry standards when it comes to that sort of situation or scenario. So there were no norms or standard code provisions that we could draw on. So we were unable to add anything to the code for that because there was just no research for us to rely on.
Okay. So would there be any recourse? I mean, so if a homeowner was living next to actually probably more in a mixed use situation, maybe. Okay, so let's have a mixed use situation where there's a bunch of retail and then there's a bunch of illumination and they're living above the retail or something, what would the home recourse would the homeowner have, I guess would be my question. Any or not?
So I think there's a few things that could limit that. It's, we do have separation distance requirements from ground mounted or monument signs that are typically the digital signs. And then we do require that the light be, we're not allowing illumination or light to be projected upwards. So it would be more horizontal or downcast, which could help to eliminate that. If there were concerns about potential light pollution or non-compliance with the regulations for the signage, they could reach out to our code compliance team and they would be able to measure what the light was. If there were multiple signs, it would probably take some coordination with the sign owners to limit that.
Okay. And then it says that there are not any signs allowed on utility poles, except it's okay for the city to post signs on the utility poles. So I looked across the street at from my home at the Wildgrass Park, and there's a light pole that has a neighborhood watch sign attached to it. So are you saying that would no longer be allowed? I'm not sure if that's in other places.
I don't believe that that's technically a permitted sign with our current code, but as drafted, that's correct. We would not allow that. There is a special exception process that could be requested, but that would be a process for folks to request those.
Okay. Yeah, those are my questions. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. First one, I'll start with the easy one. I just can't figure out, so I was looking through the regulations quickly here. What is an interactive sign? What does that mean? Interactive for me, there's like usually give and take. So does that mean you get out of the car and I'm kidding, I'm not sure that's not what it is, but.
So there have been some examples where it's sort of a blend between public art and signage. Those sorts of things were, I think, the intent of requesting, allowing that to be allowed. So not necessarily a sign that has like a smoke machine or a fog machine and it makes it like a dance party, but more of something that has small things for kids to interact with. It's particularly common with wayfinding type scenarios.
Okay. So something we'd see maybe, you said in that instance, and maybe in like a commercial plaza or something like that, potentially.
Yeah.
Sounds like we don't have any of that in our community now because it hasn't been allowed.
That's correct. Historically, it's been prohibited, so we don't have any examples of that.
Do you have any examples in other, I'm just trying to figure out in other communities nearby?
Not off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So different question, commercial signs. Are we making any changes to the size requirements or size limitations on commercial signs?
Councilmember, we are. So in almost every situation with the methodology shift from a frontage measurement to more of a square footage measurement, we have increased the allowed signage. And part of that was in an effort to reduce the number of variances that the Land Use Review Commission and City Council see with development applications. Historically, our max and currently our max is 300 square feet. And we've increased that based on building size with a scale.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I'll just preface it by saying I'm not a big sign fan. I get why businesses would want to have, big signs, but with there's a couple of businesses we have, and I'm not gonna name them today, but that have signs that I think are a lot larger than anything else we see in the community, and these kind of stick out and to my mind aren't exactly the most aesthetically pleasing. And I would say that I was just recently, I spent a night in Palm Springs and they have like, I'm guessing some significant sign requirements there. And it was kind of refreshing to go to the plazas there and you really couldn't even tell, this is probably bad for the businesses, but you couldn't really tell what was in that plaza. It was also kind of refreshing not knowing that everything was, there were a lot of commercial chains that I would see, but you couldn't tell because everything sort of blended in. And to a large extent, that was refreshing. Just having to have all this stuff coming out at you. So, yeah, I have concerns, especially if we are going to be increasing the allowable signage, because I'd rather decrease it. I do have also a question on digital signs, because again, I'd hate to become, I don't think we're close to that, but I hate to become like a Las Vegas or something where we have all these big flashing digital signs everywhere. So right now, it's my reading that they're allowed as a right, basically, as long as they're not in a residential neighborhood.
That's correct. So any developer could request it. It would need to comply with the international standards. I can't remember the exact name of it, but we reference that in the code. And that includes how much light can be emitted from the face from a distance away.
I think I saw that. Is there a way, maybe this is probably an offline question, of limiting or prohibiting those to some extent?
If it's council's desire to limit where those could be placed, we definitely move forward with that if that's the direction of council.
Okay, and then the last question would be on the yard signs, and there's a comment on allowing unlimited yard signs. Is it all the time, or is it just during the political period?
Yeah, so the changes that were made were there are 2 large yard signs that can be left on site throughout the year now. We removed that time limit, but 90 days prior to a coordinated election, that's when the unlimited number of smaller 6 square foot yard signs can be posted.
Do these changes, and I'm okay with them in general, do they affect HOA's ability to continue to regulate their communities? Because most HOAs that I'm familiar with, which is a good portion of Broomfield, do have significant restrictions on yard signs, particularly during the political season. So would they still be able to enact and enforce those regulations or restrictions?
I'm going to start the answer, and I don't know if Ms. Rogers will jump in and guide me if I go the wrong direction, but my understanding is that we are still preempted from forcing HOAs to allow signage if their current covenants prohibit it. Is that correct?
That is correct. The state law was passed that says HOAs can no longer restrict what signs outright, but HOAs have been given the power by the state to regulate size and number of signs. So local governments are still preempted in the size and number of signs area.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm done. Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Just a point of information, my interpretation of interactive signs are ones that have a touchscreen or a QR code. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was looking back at Courtney. That we agree. That would also be an example of an interactive sign.
It's not Vegas, but
All right. Any other questions? Thank you. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2209 on first reading. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2209 by title?
11C, ordinance number 2209, amending chapters 2 through 40, Board of Adjustment 17-04, definitions 17-29, interchange influence area, and repealing and reenacting chapter 17-44, sign code of the Broomfield Municipal Code, first reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Ward.
I move that ordinance number 2209 be adopted on first reading and ordered published in full, that a public hearing and second reading of the ordinance be held on July 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. as allowed by City Council procedures and rules of order.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Schaaf.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 amendments I'd like to offer. The first one, because on page 50 of the memo, it appears that the banner signs are limited to real estate usage. The first amendment I'd like to offer is that an unlimited amount of fence-mounted banners be allowed prior to a coordinated election. I'm not sure how to word this, Nancy, but okay. And do you have the, sorry. So because most political banners are 4x8, I guess would be the size. So allow ground mounted signs, an unlimited number of 32 square foot fence mounted signs to record an election. A bunch in this. I'm not quite sure how to word this.
It's worded.
Okay.
So Councilmember Marshall, your amendment was to acknowledge that fence mounted signs would be appropriate, and in utilizing that, that would include banners. Is it that one you want to do?
Yeah.
So that's noted in the definitions on this slide on section 1744-050. Right, Court? Okay. And then you'll need a second for that amendment.
All right. Second, may I have a second?
Go ahead.
Member Ward?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lim?
I just had a clarification. The end date parameters that are in the code elsewhere apply to the fence mounted signs also, is that correct? Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Councilmember Marshall?
I think it also, can you go back to the previous slide? It also adjusts the max height and the setbacks, because if it's a fence mounted sign, it's going to be on the property line, so there wouldn't be a setback for that. And then, yeah, that was.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Marshall. The cumulative effect of the change in the chart and the change in the definition is that fence mounted signs would be added, and they could be 32 square feet.
All right. Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Let's take a vote on the amendment. Marshall, amendment number 1. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Jazersky.
Sure.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Councilmember Marshall.
So the second amendment, I did discuss the HOA issue with Nancy, but was told that it was preempted by state law, much to my disappointment. But I did want to, this amendment it's unlawful for landlords or residential dwellings, including multifamily dwellings, to limit a tenant's ability to post yard signs or other signs in non-communal spaces in accordance with this chapter, provided the landlords may define such signs are attached to reduce any property damage, so as long as such restrictions do not amount to a prohibition of such signs. Basically giving tenants the same rights as property owners to have signs on their back, both on their, and this would apply to multifamily too, for balconies and such like that. So
Windows, right. I get it. Okay. Thank you for that. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
Second motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? It is up. I can't see that screen. Okay. So that is Marshall amendment number 2. No discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lim,
Yes.
Marshall,
yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Jazersky, Leslie.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. So we did our amendments. Now we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2209 as amended. Will the clerk please call the roll? Did I skip the discussion? I'm sorry. Yes, is there any discussion? Councilmember Schaff.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to thank staff for separating the commercial messaging from the specifics for the art mural. That for me was a big thing. So I appreciate staff doing that. I would assume, but please correct me if I'm wrong, outside of the meeting is fine, that there will be some type of development of code for the language for art murals and private art sculptures that's going to be generated by maybe the Arts History Cultural Committee or by the Leahy staff, as I just learned their official name. So let me know if they're going to be following up or developing code language for that. And then just one thing on the interactive signs, I think a great example is the 16th Street Mall and the Ike interactive kiosks that are down there. So the idea is, as Councilmember Cohen pointed out, some type of touchpad and being able to wayfind, I think is a great example. So just wanted to follow up on the primarily the art mural language piece. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Lim.
I just wanted to point out that as the staff said, there were a lot of opportunities for public input that it seemed like were not fully utilized, even with the sign companies and that. So, and I'm finding I attended the open house for the landscape code, and we had the same issue where, I've never been greeted by staff. Oh, good, you're here to ask questions. That was a first. And no one else was there. So, I would just encourage everyone in the public to take advantage of these opportunities in some way, because otherwise we don't, we're listening, staff is listening to your input, and we don't want regrets afterwards. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. Any other discussion? No? Okay, so seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2209 as amended. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Marsh Holston,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Jazersky, Leslie,
Yes.
Lim.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Our final item under council business. Oh, thank you all very much. That was a lot, but it's from the 70s. Glad we fixed that. One final item under council business this evening is the city and county clerk submission of a recall petition and resolution number 2023-92 regarding a recall election. At this point, Councilmember Cohen, did you want to? Yeah.
If you want me to stretch my legs, I'm happy to.
It's up to you. You can stay here, but you wouldn't be able to vote.
That's fine.
Okay. It's actually your choice. I can't tell you not to vote, but I know. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and Crystal Clemens is at the podium, once again, following everybody's footsteps to be ready and eager and willing. Please introduce this item and walk us through it. Thanks, Ms. Clemens.
Yeah, the red light's not on. There you go.
Very good. There. Yeah, good evening. Tonight we're here to talk about resolution number 2392, setting a date for the special recall election. Next slide, please. Our office received two petitions demanding a recall election for Councilmember Cohen and Councilmember Hinkle on May 3rd. An initial determination of sufficiency of the petitions was made on May 10th, 2023. On May 9th, City Council appointed Karen Goldman as the hearing officer for the protest. 10 protests were filed challenging the sufficiency of the petitions. On May 31st, the hearing officer held a hearing on all protests and issued a determination of sufficiency for both petitions on June 5th, 2023. Next slide, please. Councilmember Hinkle's term will end at the meeting after the November 7th, 2023 election, when the elected successor is sworn into office. Although she is running for re-election, this recall is specific to her current term and has no impact on any future terms. There would be no term for a successor candidate to fill. Therefore, her recall cannot be placed on the November ballot in the city and county clerk. We are not submitting the petition to recall Councilmember Hinkle to council. Tonight, the legal requirements, state law requires that, next slide, please, sorry. State law requires that the city and county clerk submit the petition together with a certificate of sufficiency to city council at the first regular meeting following the hearing officer's determination, which this resolution does. Next slide, please. Tonight, staff is recommending that the recall election will be held on November 7th, 2023 in conjunction with the coordinated election. The recall election will only be for Councilmember Cohen. The coordinated election will be held with one voting service and polling center opening beginning October 30th here at One Desk Homes Drive. 13 election precincts already exist and will be used within the existing Ward 5 boundaries. Successor candidate petitions for individuals to replace Councilmember Cohen can be circulated beginning tomorrow. The earliest date a candidate may circulate a petition and must be submitted by July 3rd, 2023. And the city and county clerk be delegated the authority to appoint election judges in a similar manner as all other elections conducted by the city and county of Broomfield. And that concludes our presentation tonight, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clemens. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in-person. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard on this item, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Not seeing any. Questions from city council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. That doesn't even apply here, but are there any questions from council? Councilmember Shab.
Thank you, Mayor. So I sent a quick question to staff about this. Will there be a separate ballot for the recall versus the coordinated November election?
No, there will not be a separate ballot. At this time, there's just so many what ifs. There's a lot of issues possible coming with state and different things that we may anticipate a multiple page ballot, but it doesn't mean it's a separate ballot.
Okay, and this may be the first time that Broomfield sees a multi-page ballot.
Correct.
Okay, and then I do have one other question. So you had mentioned the petitions can start being circulated tomorrow and they must be turned in by July 3rd, 2023. Is there a time certain on 2023? Is it 5:00 PM on July 23rd or sorry, July 3rd? Or can someone turn it in basically at 11:59 PM on July 3rd?
5:00, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I have a hypothetical. What if more than one person turns in a petition? Would that be a ranked choice voting thing?
If
3. If there were 3?
Mhm.
Yeah, 2 or not just 2.
Correct.
So it wouldn't be like a normal candidate campaign where anybody could file up until the end of August. This is a specific window of time if anybody wanted to challenge for that seat.
Correct. So what you're going to see is we're going to have the petition for the recall, but then there'll also be the regular one for the other position, the Heidi Hinkle, Councilmember Hinkle's seat, where there'll be the regular petition filing in August.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. I didn't know
You're
that.
welcome.
All right. Well, then first is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2023-92. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2023-92 by title?
11D, City and County Clerk Submission of Recall Petition in Resolution Number 2023-92, setting the date for a recall election and prescribing the manner of conducting such election.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ward.
I move that resolution number 2023-92 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Delgadillo.
So seconded.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Jezerski, Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Mayor, if I may, just real quickly, she's going to hate that I'm doing this, but if we could all just acknowledge for a moment, Penny Norman is sitting in the audience for this item. 20+ year really does ensure that Broomfield has safe, thoughtful, well-executed elections. Broomfield does not struggle with some of the other issues. And so we are grateful, Miss Norman. I know you love when I she so did not want us to call her down to the podium for any additional questions, but we can't let her escape without true gratitude, Penny. So thank you.
We agree. Thank you. And thank you too, Ms. Clements. All right, so moving on, the city and county attorney's report is next. Ms. Rogers?
A very quick report, and she's not going to like that I'm doing this either because I didn't warn her, but the city and county attorney's office is happy to have a job shadow for this summer. Lauren Hyatt is shadowing for her senior seminar class. She's a rising senior at Jefferson Academy High School. So if you want to raise your hand, Lauren. Yeah, we're excited to have her. You will see Lauren at the council meetings during the summer. And then she and I do sort of follow up and prep meetings and go through the agenda and talk about some of the legal issues that come up during these very exciting council meetings.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. All right. City county managers report, Ms. Hoffman?
Just real briefly, I've had some questions regarding pools. 'Tis the season, and lack of lifeguards. And there's many surrounding communities, I can think of 4 right off the top of my head, that not only are they having reduced hours, but they're not opening their pools altogether. And we are not struggling with that. We have 204 lifeguards that are signed on. We have a couple more that we need to add, but even based on the number that we have right now, we are all systems go for our pools and outdoors. We are struggling. I know that we've sent out some community messages with regards to the rain. It's always fascinating that we're so grateful being in a desert state to have the moisture, and with moisture comes challenges, mosquitoes being one of them. And grass being mowed being the other. So as the grass grows, as do the weeds. So the temporary positions for our Parks Department, that has been a struggle. We continue to make the rounds as efficiently as possible, but again, it continues to, as soon as you get caught up on it, which it's almost impossible when we have our nightly rains. And it's changing from nightly rains into all-day rains, and not just rains, but flooding level rains. So continuing to do the best we can, and big shout out for our Parks Department that continue to be so focused on doing the best they can under the circumstances that they have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hoffman. Thanks, yeah, I agree. It's crazy weather. All right, well, there is no legislative update or business before the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority or the Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors. There are no special reports or requests for future action this evening, concluding the items on the agenda. Is there any other business to come before the council? There being no further business, the council meeting is adjourned, and we'll resume our executive session in a few minutes. Thanks, everyone.